Welcome back to the Upshots two-part special on Mr. Christopher Eubank.
We have to be crazy, we have to be deluded, we have to be nuts. We have to be the bollocks.
Roche, you're still here?
Yeah.
Still not wearing a monocle or carrying a cane.
Well, for the sake of continuation, I have put the same outfit on, but it's obviously a different day.
Obviously, it's a week apart,
Yeah.
but still no riding jodhpurs, which is still none of us in a sleeveless
No
suit.
cane.
Yeah, Zach's also here. Welcome back.
I am still here.
Yeah. Well, I thought we were going to get the accent then.
Oh, hello.
I feel like we're getting a bit Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
I felt my last couple in that episode weren't that Chris Eubank anymore. They were a bit sort of John Fashanu, Hannibal Lecter, a bit simpering.
I've never been. I don't find Chris Eubank's accent that sinister, and you guys have both gone quite horror.
Yeah, or you think it's a bit want to sweetie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a bit of bouncy fruitiness to it.
I think it's that you both change your face slightly when you're about. You
Yeah.
can tell you get
Yeah.
into the character.
It
Yeah.
slightly reminds me. Did you ever watch Goodness Gracious Me? And there was the guy who played like an old English gent, and he called everyone like old fruity. It was a
No.
bit like okay. You guys are too young for that, but anyway. when we left you in part one, Chris Eubank's tongue, career, and credit score were hanging by a thread because Nigel Benn had pummeled him for 4 rounds, and he was slumped in the corner. Your tongue bleeds a lot when you cut it, doesn't it? And I think he's basically choking on the blood, but he doesn't want his corner or, worst of all, the referee to see because that'll stop the fight. So apparently he's just sort of like choking it down, manages to staunch the bleeding, and rises to fight in round 4. And Chris says he has no recollection of rounds 4 to 6. So after the tongue, there's like a few rounds of just like, it's a blur. He says like, I can only assume I was just trying to deal with this absolute tempest of punches that's flying in on him.
Thinking about that mortgage.
Yeah.
Just thinking, 190 grand. If I fix now at 2.5%.
Stamp duty holiday will end.
He's got all sorts on his mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's back out there, and as I said in part 1, Chris is known for having a granite jaw. So if anyone can weather this storm, it's him. And that's all he's focusing on. And by round 7, Chris Eubank, despite everything, is still standing. And Nigel Benn is starting to knacker himself out a bit, because it is really tiring, especially when you hit as hard as he does. And much like the famous Rumble in the Jungle before it, the big puncher is starting to lose energy and lose momentum. And meanwhile, Chris is starting to, he's thinking, okay, maybe I'll survive this. And by the 9th round, he sees an opportunity. By this point, Nigel Benn, one of his eyes has closed up from one of Chris's punches. And apparently, I know nothing about boxing, but apparently that's a huge handicap. But it means... sounds like one. You don't have to be Frank Lawrence,
He's only got one eye that he can use, so...
Yeah, admittedly, if you close one eye, you can't see as much. And so basically, Chris exploits this for what he describes as cat and mouse stuff, his specialty. So suddenly he's weaving a lot more. And, as Ben is increasingly resembling just a lumbering giant, Chris sees his opportunity and reins in the punches. And the referee steps in and stops the fight.
Wow.
Chris Eubank is world champion. Against the odds, he has dethroned the great Nigel Benn MP.
What's that technical knockout?
Yeah, ref stops fight, it's a technical knockout. But he's fucked. He's all
Yeah.
over. It's basically he lands a huge uppercut on Ben, which is what closes his eye up. And at that point, the commentators are like, he's not right. His legs are all over the place. And then in the 9th, he's just like, his legs, you can tell he's going down.
Yeah.
So it's pretty emphatic in the end.
It's mad that he hid the fact that he was bleeding profusely though, because they would have stopped.
What I would
If
say
he
is,
was
in his
bleeding.
book, he makes more of the tongue thing than anyone else did. But is that because they didn't know?
Do you think it was just like a little?
Yeah, I think he had an ulcer.
What was he doing with it? Was he just swallowing the blood then?
Yeah, but I guess it stops. I don't know. To be honest, it doesn't get mentioned again, so I don't know. But
He can weave a yarn.
yeah, and he's
kinda-
quite good at sort of making something quite against the odds. But
Yeah.
this was a massive upset, and even going into the fight was an upset. But also in that sort of Rumble in the Jungle way, it was like 7 rounds of one guy getting pummeled, and then he completely comes back and reverses it, which is what makes it such a classic. He's a comeback hero, and Chris uses the post-fight interview to propose to his girlfriend live on
that's
TV,
sweet.
which is quite sweet.
That's very sweet.
Karen, can we get married now? Can we get married?
Listen, this is a new site.
Marry me, Karen.
This
and they do. They get married like 2 months later.
Wow.
Barry Hearn's his best man.
Interesting.
Sweet,
That
but a bit
is-
sad.
Yeah, didn't you guys do a story recently about someone who had a best man?
Erdogan was Mesut Ozil's
Yeah.
best man.
That's worse.
Yeah, that's
I,
what
can see, I think Barry Heard would do a good speech though, wouldn't he?
Oh yeah, 100%.
And him and Barry have been through it a bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a complete, but it's still, it's kind of like getting your boss or
It's a
like
bit
your client.
worky.
It's
Yeah.
getting your client.
So you guys wouldn't be each other's best man.
Well, I'm already
Well,
married.
Yeah, that's true.
And actually, Zach, I am available.
Yeah, true.
I've done it a few
Wasn't even
times.
invited to your wedding.
There you are. We just met at that point.
Yeah, he would do a good speech. I think that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know I'll do a good job, but it's a bit like, what about Beaver and Nasty? And
What about your
Sticks?
9
Yeah.
siblings?
Yeah,
Like,
And what about the trainer who's coughed up his year's salary on a Jaguar? I think he's in with a shout, surely.
Yeah.
yeah. There are a few candidates who you think you'd pick, but to be fair, maybe the reason he chooses Barry as best man is because it is a boxing themed wedding, which it is. I'm not just saying that. So apparently the invite has 2 crossed gloves on it.
Jesus
The
Christ.
cake has 9 layers, 1 for each of the rounds he fought against Nigel Benn.
Oh, he's kind of made it about himself, is what I will
Yeah,
say.
I don't know how far the boxing
I can
team
see
goes.
the 2 figures on the top of the cake are just him and Nigel Benn.
He's just wearing gloves all day. It's a bit weird. I don't know
It's
how.
quite don't tell the
we are
bride.
going to struggle to get the ring on there.
Yeah, it's a weird theme to choose. Themes are weird for
Themed
weddings.
weddings are
yeah,
bad,
don't go
yeah.
for a theme. Anyway, they then go to a lovely honeymoon in Barbados, but unfortunately, Chris is now, as world champion, he's now like he's a prize target for the Paps, and they follow him there, and he ends up getting into an altercation with one of them, who apparently just won't leave him alone all week, and at one point shoves his lens right in Chris's face, and Chris says, I stood up and pushed him away, but I think it might have been a bit more than that, because he's immediately arrested, charged with assault, and imprisoned in a wooden hut.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's how he describes it.
I think that I would believe that there's more to it than that. It is a bit
Malay.
like, well, do you know it's like, what was the thing that Cantona?
Yeah, he kung
was
fu
supposed-
kicked him.
Yeah, he kung fu kicked him, but didn't he say that he said like, oh, it'll be something really
It's an
silly?
early bath for you, Mr. Cantona.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's
yeah.
not what happened.
Yeah, I don't. He's not a reliable narrator. on that.
No, poor Karen.
Yeah, on your honeymoon, your
Yes,
husband's in jail.
Not very nice.
I'm gonna get a massage while you cool off in there. Anyway, he's the world champion now, and that's sort of the deal. You become a target. It's not just Paps who want a piece of him. Other boxers are lining up to fight this new champion. And his first defense is against a guy called Dan Sherry, whose method of training is to go to American high security prisons and fight the lifers, the inmates.
How is that legal?
I know. It's the 80s.
Just like hire people out. Hey, can I just come in and beat the fuck
Yeah,
out of people?
can I fight them? Yeah, sure.
Like it's a zoo. That's
I do think,
ridiculous.
yeah.
I
Before,
mean, for them as well, it kind of breaks up the
Breaks up the
monotony
day, yeah.
of
Something
a
to do.
life sentence, right?
well, it's just that and like just etching tally charts
Yeah.
on the wall and reading the Bible. Yeah, it's a miserable life.
Do you think that some of the lifers that he's fighting are these like huge tattooed like Hell's Angel sort of people, and then it's just a lifer like some like nonce,
Yeah, I'll pick him.
skinny nonce.
Or like a tax fraud, Bernie Madoff. Like,
Poisoner.
I'll beat him up. Yeah, or a corned beef poisoner.
Yeah.
Anyway, the fight itself against Dan Cherry is extremely controversial because basically Chris accidentally knocks Cherry out with a headbutt. He claims that basically he's trying to get out of a clinch and he lifts his head and smashes into Cherry. And he is ultimately docked points and fined for the headbutt, even though he says it's an accident. But while all this like is happening, Cherry is counted out and therefore Chris wins by technical knockout. It's a pretty controversial way to win.
Yeah.
And doesn't do his reputation any good. This is where he starts to become like really quite hated. So beyond just like the villain persona, stuff like this, people think he's a bit of a cheat and he's lucky. But, you know, he's a big name. He's still unbeaten in 27 fights at this point. Never lost a professional fight.
Wow.
So his record is very good. And then he's got this fight against Michael Watson, at which point everyone is rooting for Watson because Chris is this villain. He's described in the tabloids as Britain's most disliked world champion.
That doesn't feel very. It's such very Chris Eubank to say dislike.
Yeah, I was going to say, the
rather
word you're
than
looking for is
hated.
resented, despised.
Despised.
Disliked.
Disliked.
Yeah. So I don't really like him.
Yeah. It is strange for someone to be world champion and in their home country to be so hated. Like you can't imagine people saying this,
yeah.
but like Anthony Joshua.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it does go beyond the pantomime thing at this point as well. Like, if you watch his ring walks, he's just getting booed constantly at all these, and he's kind of loving it. But
Yeah.
It's weird though, because like looking at him now, he seems like such a like likable character. He's just so eccentric and funny. You'd have thought like if somebody burst onto the scene now,
Yeah,
like
I'd root for
that,
them.
you'd love them.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But it's not like he's like a Kyrgios. He's too weird. Do you know what I mean? He's not like Roy Keane.
Yeah,
You're not
he's-
like, oh, he's a dick, but
he's
he's
Cantona, kind of.
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
He kind of is. It's like you literally don't know
Theatrical.
what he'll do, and it's not just about like being a bastard. It's like more confusing.
Yeah.
Just misunderstood.
Very by himself, I think. Among them. Anyway, he's got bigger problems than during crowd because a week before the fight, he has the weigh-in, and he's a full stone overweight.
Oh my God.
Quite careless, I think. Anyway, so there's only one way to deal with that. You've got to not let food or water pass your lips for 4 days while training.
Jesus.
So he literally does not drink any water or eat, and he's doing these like grueling physical training sessions, just trying to sweat it all out. He says his eyes were so dehydrated, he had to periodically plunge his head into a sink of water to soothe the
Jesus.
dryness.
Oh my god.
I have heard that sometimes if they want to make weight, they'll drink salt water.
What, do you then puke or?
It's something to do with, or like you'll like eat salt
Oh.
because
dehydrate yourself.
You're
Oh.
intentionally trying to
because water
dehydrate
weight's probably
yourself.
the easiest way to drop
Yeah.
quickly at that point.
But a stone in water weight in 4 days is,
Yeah, it's
is,
mental.
is crazy.
Yeah.
Or they get in really hot bath. Like, it's really dangerous what they do. They get in really hot baths, hot saltwater baths, just try to like drain
Well,
all
his
the
son
moisture
was
from their
supposed to
body.
do it for the fight against Conor Ben, who's Nigel Ben's son, and Chris Eubank intervened and was like, "This should not happen. It's too dangerous to drop weight."
Yeah.
He's really anti people doing this. I guess.
It's not really fair either.
Yeah.
Because you are kind of
Yeah.
going back up to your once you make
Yeah.
weight, then you'll just go back up to.
You must be pretty tired. Can you imagine the week
Yeah,
before the
it's
big
true.
fight doing that?
Yeah.
He said he was absolutely exhausted. Like, it was really bad. And then so he ends up winning on a slightly controversial points decision. Again, a lot of people think that his opponent should have won. And on his way back out afterwards, people are spitting and throwing coins at him.
Jesus
Said,
Christ.
"I was the villain of all villains."
Throwing coins at his. It's like biblical.
Yeah.
So, again, it's so theatrical.
Or take your pieces of silver. It's also just like quite painful if you get hit by a coin.
Yeah, do you think it reminded him of that robbery?
Oh, 2 days. Oh, you want
Just
10p
do
coins? He's probably still got them. Anyway, he immediately then faces Watson in a rematch 3 months later. And what happens in that rematch has a far bigger impact on him than anything that's come before. So he walks out to pure hatred from the crowd, soaks it up, kind of loves it. And in the fight, Watson really dominates. Chris says later he'd never had such a beating as that fight. And in the 10th round, he's behind on every scorecard. And in that 10th round, he's knocked down 18 seconds before the bell. So he's like basically about to lose. And the only way he can win at that point is by knocking out Watson. And he gets up, having been knocked down with 18 seconds left, and smashes him with an uppercut. It's mad because he's just been knocked down himself. It's a pretty amazing moment in boxing. Anyway, so then after that, Watson's really shaken. And in the 12th round, Chris, needing a knockout, lands a flurry of punches, at which point the ref stops the fight.
There's a lot of strange decisions.
What are you
babe.
saying he shouldn't do?
I just, no one's getting actually knocked out. I know that you keep saying this.
I mean,
Well, if you allow me to finish, Roche. So Watson then collapses in his corner and ends up in a coma for 40 days.
Look, guys,
you
I
love
was like,
that, don't you?
I
That's
kind of
what,
set
that's
you
what,
up
that's
for
what
that.
you wanted to see.
I mean, like, you can't even be feeling a coma anymore because of woke.
Yeah. The ref getting involved really. Yeah, I mean, I kind of set you up for that. So it then takes him several months to relearn how to speak and eat, and 6 years to get out of a wheelchair.
Wow.
Jesus.
That big enough knockout for you, Rush?
That is terrifying.
Yeah, awful, awful.
What? So he was just really fucked.
So I think basically what happened is when Chris got up from being knocked down and landed that uppercut, he was basically, the ref should have stopped the fight at that point.
But then it would have been a split decision.
Well, I guess the ref just didn't notice the signs. I don't really know. But in any case, it carried on for 2 more rounds, at which point the commentators are like, yeah, he doesn't look right. And so that last flurry of punch is really bad. And then, to make matters worse, it took ages for doctors to arrive. They didn't have any on site. Watson ends up winning like £1 million in damages over this. But the doctors who arrived were in dinner jackets because they were like at some event nearby. It was
Oh
like
my
a
God.
scramble.
Really? Well, they had no ambulance.
I
there
don't
or-
exactly know, but yeah,
crazy.
apparently there was a big delay in the medical attention, so that's a factor.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That happened.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a big
surprised that
fuck.
this doesn't happen more often in boxing, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like, you do hear the
Mm.
odd story about like very bad injuries and deaths and stuff, but like considering how many boxing matches go on all the time where
Yeah.
people are just getting pummeled in the head.
Yeah.
Happens a bit, doesn't it? Chris is quite on this stuff now, as we'll see at the end of the episode. He's like gets quite involved in preventing this sort of thing happening in
Yeah.
future. Obviously, this is like horrible. Watson's in hospital. As I said, it'll take him 6 years before he can walk again.
That is terrifying.
It's like as bad as it gets without dying, right?
Yeah.
And Chris visits him regularly. They kind of become friends from this, but it obviously has a huge impact on him, having been through that. There's footage of him like sobbing, rewatching the clip, like
Jesus.
last year maybe. And then Chris is involved in another awful tragedy. So he's driving down the A23 and he loses control of his car, comes off the road and kills a road worker. So basically, he wasn't speeding, he wasn't drinking, but he skidded on some grit
Right.
and braked, which makes you skid more, if you know your driving theory. And he killed this guy. It's awful. So it's weird. He was cleared of negligence, but then it says he was convicted of driving without due care and attention, which sounds like the definition of negligence to me.
Yeah.
Gets a fine and stuff. But the brother of the guy who died said, none of us blame Chris Eubank for this or feel any bitterness towards him. So I think the
Shit.
general perception is it was an accident and he didn't do much wrong. But
Didn't he got 6 points in his license as well, which seems a little bit flippant. when
Yeah.
I
you
think you can get that
kill
for like
somebody
driving
just-
in a bus lane.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's just, I mean, either if you clear him of negligence, he doesn't need 6 points in his
Yeah.
license.
yeah,
like-
or if it's his fault, ban him for life.
Yeah.
Must be a bit weird
Yeah.
at the speed awareness course. So like, what did you do?
it's a bit strange that he was already so hated for no real reason, just for being a bit of an oddball, and then he almost kills someone and kills someone else. And it kind of seems like people are then
Yeah, he
nicer
gets some
to him.
sympathy.
Yeah.
I think that is basically true. I mean, equally, like after this, he says when he left court, people were screaming like murderer at him. I think he probably was quite hated for it, but in the long run, there's sympathy.
Right.
From what I've read, I don't think he was really at fault there, but it's
just
confusing.
a cold night grit on the road. that
Yeah,
sort of
I think the
thing.
suggestion is that he should have known not to like brake and make the car skid more.
I can't drive.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this is.
yeah.
over
I do
my
remember
head.
a thing that you're meant to like. Can't remember what you're meant to do. It's just not that. Anyway, horrible story, but it obviously has a deep impact on him. He considers quitting as a fighter entirely, but he does stick it out and becomes quite a different fighter. So he never again shows any desire to knock people out.
Really?
Yeah, I guess this is probably more about the Michael Watson thing, but maybe just both.
You don't want to kill anyone.
You're just scared of killing someone,
Yeah.
yeah, which makes sense.
But so he became like super technical. Or
Yeah,
something?
he was
Right,
basically
okay.
much more defensive and just grind out points wins,
Right.
which is like a lot of boxing's like that, isn't it? And it's quite boring.
It's really not fun to watch. Like,
If you watch, I watched the highlights of the Eubank Ben fight,
yeah.
and it is so good because they're just swinging at each other
Mm.
for like 9 rounds or whatever it is.
They don't do it like that anymore.
Mm,
Even these big exhibition fights that they have in like Riyadh, and you have to stay up till 4 a.m. to watch
Yeah.
them. For a start, that's shit because it's not fun. Like it must have been really fun to watch boxing this time, and it's on ITV at 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
You just like get all your mates around and
Yeah.
watch it, and they beat the fuck out of each
Yeah.
other. Whereas now it's like they're getting paid 87 million to go to Riyadh. You have to watch it at 3 a.m. and nothing happens.
yeah, it's generally you don't get fights like that. You can still find them, but anyway, he used to have quite entertaining ones.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm pro
You-
people.
yeah.
I'm
More comas.
I just want there to be a risk
a bit
that
of
someone ends up in a
excitement.
coma.
I'd like to see more people have to learn how to speak again.
just if I'm paying 40 quid, you know, it's fine. I'm raised on WWE. That's why.
Yeah, you
It's
expect-
wrecked
Need
it
more
for
more
me.
metal chairs.
Yeah. More like ladders and cages.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, while Chris is becoming a little bit more reserved in the ring, off it, he is going in completely the opposite direction. So he's obviously making big money now. Like, he's the champion, and he starts really throwing himself into the eccentric gentleman look. So anytime he leaves the house, he's turned out in an impeccable suit. He said he used to shine his shoes 2 or 3 times a day because they got dusty.
Right.
And he also has this barber who cuts his hair once a week, and he'll fly around the world wherever he is.
He's
So that
bald now?
Not
He wasn't at
not
this point.
entirely. I mean, now he is.
Because of the barber.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, when you get your hair cut that often. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, it means that he's constantly he's always looking sharp. And in 1992, he does a photo shoot with Esquire magazine, and they really get him to play up to this image. So he's already dressing smart, but they get him wearing like riding boots and jodhpurs, the tight riding trousers.
That's quite the look.
It's
Very Jilly Cooper.
Yeah, it's very Jilly. It's very Rivals, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Shagging a stable hand or something.
Yeah. Doing this photo shoot, it kind of inspires him really to take it to the next level. So he starts carrying a cane, wearing a monocle. He spends loads of money on these like antique canes.
Have you ever in real life encountered someone with a monocle?
No.
Yeah, I reckon his is non-prescription and he puts it in when the camera's on and then he's like, fucking hell, that's painful.
Yeah.
Should have got one for this episode. I've never, ever in the flesh seen someone with a monocle.
No. He's an aesthete, though.
Yeah,
This
but
is
like,
a...
are they currently, how many
If not-
people living in Britain do you think regularly wear a monocle? Do you think the number is like less than 10?
I think you're right. I think he puts it in for the shot and then
Yeah.
takes it out.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It does work for him because he's voted best dressed man in both 1991 and 1993. Don't know what happened in 92.
Tony Benn.
He also wins Tie Wearer of the Year from the Tie Wearers Guild of Great Britain.
I feel like that counted for more back then. More people wore ties in the early 90s.
Yeah, that's true.
The
But then they
guild,
had
yeah.
that resurgence in like the Avril Lavigne.
Yeah, do you
Early
think she ever won
2000s.
tie wearer of the year?
She should have done.
She should. She reinvented the tie.
So he's picking up a lot of accolades. Chris actually says in his book, "True, I was also voted the 14th worst dressed man, but that was just a media stunt, which is simply not true."
So hang on, does he win worst and best in the same year?
I think, around the same, around the same time.
kind of right, isn't it?
Yeah.
He sort of is simultaneously the best and worst.
Yeah, it's a bit
He's
Marmite.
polarizing, yeah, I'd say.
Yeah.
But like I remember first becoming aware of Chris Eubank and thinking that he was a jockey when I was a child because he dresses like a jockey, and then like learning he was a boxer, and I was like, what? It's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it doesn't really make
Yeah,
sense.
he doesn't dress like a
His manner and his sport, are very.
Yeah.
very
But
different.
that's what I
yeah.
like.
Yeah, and if this slightly odd look wasn't getting him enough attention, Chris also decides to buy himself a gigantic truck. So it's called an American Peterbilt 379. At the time, it was the largest lorry in Europe, the one he owned.
Oh,
Look
my
at a
God.
picture of it now. It's
Proper
huge.
American
It's
one.
like, yeah, you can see it dragging like logs through
Where does he
small
drive?
town
Oregon.
America. So he drives it around Brighton. And
narrow roads in
apparently
Yeah.
there's
On the seafront.
It's also quite hilly. I would not want to drive that. Do
Yeah.
a hill start
he
and
also,
that.
another
It's very Brighton, this sort of thing.
another feature of it that I like, he's got the number plate 1KO,
Yeah.
which he ended up having to buy a Rolls Royce that had that number plate so that he could get hold of it. But yeah, there's nowhere big enough for him to park this truck in Brighton. Surprise, surprise. But Chris just isn't that bothered because he knows that the council doesn't have any clamps that are big enough to clamp him. So he's just like picking up fines left, right, and
It's
centre.
just like
Love
nipping
that.
to the supermarket, innit?
Yeah, he drives it everywhere.
Big
He
Sainsbury's.
said, if I get £100 worth of tickets each time I go out, it's worth every penny because the truck lifts people. It inspires them. I always think if I can make people feel how I did when I first saw it, then I'm doing what I do best.
To be fair, if I saw Chris Eubank driving that
Yeah.
with 1K,
It would make
it would
your
lift
day.
me.
Yeah.
It would lift
Yeah,
me.
he says it's the best buy he's ever made.
Oh, I actually do love how strange he is.
Yeah.
I've become enamored with him.
Yeah.
He's charmed me.
And also, he's not, a lot of episodes, it's like, oh, and he's a massive shagger.
No,
It's
he's
not
not.
that.
Yeah, I like that now he's got a lot of money and he's spending it on
Weird
like
shit.
weird shit,
Yeah,
like
fruity shit.
gigantic trucks and monocles.
Yeah.
It's just
He's already
it's
bought
pretty
his
fun.
house. He bought his house in Brighton. before the
Exactly.
fight,
yeah,
so-
yeah, he's paid off the mortgage on that.
Presumably his house is absolutely mental.
Yeah.
He owns like quite a few properties around Brighton
Oh,
by the
okay.
end.
He's a landlord.
He's a landlord.
No, he's
We know what we think
actually
about
he's actually not. I was going to come back to this later, but he in the mid-90s he buys this huge house in central Brighton, so it's like quite an iconic building, and he calls it Buckingham Palace, and he converts it and moves in like 100 homeless people.
Oh, Oh,
So
Yeah.
he's
very charitable.
He's one of the good guys.
he's the
Although
only good
I looked
landlord.
it up, and in 2000 it was sold for redevelopment.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the truth?
One of these. It's like we're gonna put in affordable homes.
Yeah.
Put in homeless people. To be fair, he had some money problems, so I guess he had to sell it for redevelopment.
Yeah. Anyway, back in the ring.
Sorry.
And Chris, obviously, he's got a world title to defend. And the first 4 people he fights are all Americans, and he sees them off without too much trouble. The only thing that annoys him is that one of them is a working postman.
Yeah, that you could imagine that annoying him. It's too
Yeah.
whimsical.
Yeah,
He needs to
yeah.
be the only whimsical one.
Yeah, he's like, a postman. This was the singularly most annoying mental obstacle for me to overcome in my entire career. Why? Because he was still a postman at the time, despite challenging me for the world title.
So, the accent, which like Roald Dahl is it? Where she's like, I will scream and scream until I'm thick.
It's Charlie the Chocolate
It's a Charlie
Factory.
John, right? That's what I'm getting. Veruca Salt.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting. It's because the lisp was on every word.
Yeah.
So I'm not claiming my accent's any better. It's just...
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, I think it's just, I'm kind of trying to work out why he's annoyed about this. Whether it's like he doesn't like that this guy is like more humble than
Yeah.
him.
I think it's that.
I took it
Or-
as like, I'm a big shot. And I
Yeah.
shouldn't be fighting people who have to work a second career because that implies they're not big shots.
Yeah.
Mm.
But he said that just like throughout the fight, he just couldn't get his mind off it. He was just like trying to fight this guy. And it's
It
like,
is
this guy's
weird that you
fucking
could be a postman.
And
How do you
have
find
a
the
box.
time?
Yeah.
Can you imagine you're like waiting for a parcel? You turn on ITV and you're like, oh, for
There he
fuck's sake.
fucking is.
My postman is actually very
And
reliable.
DPD, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every.
Yeah. But yeah, he sees off this postman, and in 1993 he comes up against a British challenger, a guy called Ray Close. And 2 weeks before the fight, Chris makes the slightly strange decision to book himself in for a circumcision.
As an adult.
Of course.
Yeah, so
I didn't know you could do that.
he says that it was just a matter of hygiene.
What, as in, like, I've just decided it's more hygienic.
I don't know if
which
he's
it
had a
is,
chat
but-
with someone and found out.
He's
a bit
27 at this
about-
point.
Yeah.
Jesus
Because some
Christ.
people have to get it done in later life, like you have to, right? For medical reasons.
have to be circumcised as an adult.
Yeah, because it can get really tight, and then they have to be.
Oh.
Yeah.
But maybe it's because
I know some people it's happened
right.
to.
I know that you don't know them. They go to other schools.
Yeah.
It happened at the summer holidays.
But I get the impression from him he's just like happened to be reading something about it. It's like, that is more hygienic.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'll circumcise
But
myself.
it's still
2
weird,
weeks before.
weird timing to do it just
Very
before a massive, like defending your world title. Just
Do you think it's
wait
because he
till
was just
after.
suddenly fighting Americans? Because Americans are really weird about it.
Yeah, they all are, aren't they?
They're all circumcised and they act like it's like really weird for people to not be circumcised.
It is.
Maybe that was it. Yeah. Yeah, he'd heard about the postman. The postman had told him
Yeah.
all about it. And
Postman would be like, not only am I a postman, I'm also
But also,
circumcised.
isn't it fucking painful? Like, both in the moment and also the recovery. So, like, how are you going to fight a world title defense
Yeah.
2 weeks later?
I mean, he lost a stone in 4 days.
Yeah,
So.
quite likes
Yeah,
the pain.
Yeah.
he insists on having no anaesthetic
Of course
during,
he
during
does.
the operation. Even weirder, he insists on having a mirror set up so that he can watch his own circumcision.
Ooh, that is so
That's
horrible.
Chris Eubank for
Yeah,
you. That's
it's very
Chris.
strange.
Is it a big procedure?
Oh, yeah.
Um,
What do you mean?
As an adult? is
Yeah,
it
it's
big-
general. I thought it was general anesthetic, but he's watching it in a mirror.
he
Yeah.
insists on.
I only know
no
because I
anaesthetic.
explored the option of having my son circumcised, and they said if you wait till after he's 1, he has a general anesthetic. But apparently, unless you're Chris Eubank,
Really?
yeah.
Please carry on.
Sorry, where were
Right,
we?
okay.
Chris watches.
So he gets the doctor to set up a mirror at the end of the bed so that he can watch his own foreskin being chopped off. He also gets his trainer Ronnie, who's in the room, to come over as well. Like at one point, it's like it's getting to the good bit, and he's like, Ronnie, come look at this. And Ronnie's just like, "Look, honestly, I'm
Poor
fine.
Ronnie.
I don't want to do it. So yeah, that happens,
Right, okay.
which is weird.
So going into the
And
fight,
going into the fight, he's recovering from.
Swollen.
I guess
yeah,
you drop
it's
a bit of weight by losing a foreskin.
Yeah,
I don't know. That I
It's not
suppose
that.
when everything counts.
yeah. I guess he's because you'd imagine that you're still a little bit tender down there
Yeah.
after two weeks later, but you know, boxing you're not allowed to go below the belt.
Yeah, but
anyway,
just like
That's
so-
true.
skipping around the ring must hurt
yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Well, the fight actually does end in a draw. It's the first time Chris hasn't won. So, yeah, maybe that did have something to do with it.
Is there any confirmation that he did get circumcised, or did he draw the fight and then come up with this cock and ball story? Circumcised and watching it, and his trainer was there. Just feels a bit convenient.
It's the sort of excuse Chris Eubank would come up with when I was being circumcised without any anaesthetic. So
yeah, I don't know if I believe it.
I was in a veritable tempest of pain. Yeah, it's an odd one.
Yeah,
it was an odd choice.
Anyway, he's got an even bigger matchup coming because Nigel Benn is finally getting his rematch. It's 1993 now, and the public have basically been clamouring for this rematch ever since the first one because it was such a classic. And Nigel Benn, meanwhile, has been working his way back up to the top, and he has fought his way all the way back to WBO champion. So this is actually a unification bout. The winner will claim both belts.
Right.
And, you know, despite the fact that Nigel has been on a really good run, Chris is so confident. Some would say too confident. So he has WBO and WBC champion sewn into his shorts before the match. So he's already calling it, which never ends well. And apparently when Chris walks into the ring, the commentator just goes, "The ego has landed."
Love that.
So that's his rep at the time. Whereas now I don't think the arrogance is quite as, like, pronounced. Anyway, there is one downside to this fight for both Nigel and Chris, which is that Don King, the controversial promoter and absolute snake, he's arranged the fight, and he's written it into the contracts that both the winner and the loser of the fight will have to join him in his stable after. So you're basically tied to Don King by participating. But they're both like, well, fuck it, it's worth the money, even though neither of them want to work with Don King. He's mental. It's a big deal globally. So the fight is screened in 60 countries with a combined audience of 1 billion.
Wow.
Which
1 billion?
He also claims that 30 million watch it in the UK, which is half the population.
I could believe that.
Yeah, I mean, like, EastEnders used to get like 20 million for, like, what will happen to film.
Dirty
Yeah,
Dads.
Dirty Dads, classic. So it's plausible. And it was shown directly after the ITV News. So
Right.
it was prime time.
It's Tony Benn double dipping. Back to back.
Quick grilling from Paxo and then
Suit off.
it's pretty mad. It's
Yeah.
regardless of the precise accuracy of those numbers, it is a massive deal. Sadly, the actual fight is nowhere near as good as the first one, and it ends in a draw, which is another contentious decision. I think a lot of people had it for Ben, but Eubank dodges defeat. But it's a draw, which means neither of them loses their title. And in a very funny twist, it means that Don King doesn't get either of them, because the way he'd written the contract was both the winner and the loser will join me. But he hadn't thought about the draw.
Oh.
That seems like quite a big oversight from someone who's supposed to be a
Yeah,
really
especially
shrewd dealer.
A wily fox.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say that because they drew, they both just had to go for him anyway, and it was the big.
No, well, he said I'll get the winner and the loser,
Interesting.
but the one outcome he hadn't prepared for was the draw.
Right.
So yeah, so there's a bit of an upside for them. Sort of makes me think the fight was rigged, but
I was also thinking that. Do you not? But it kind of just seems like Chris Eubank's going a bit soft as he goes up. Like more draws, less comas.
well, it's weird because
He's gone soft.
Where are my comas?
Everyone's walking out of the ring.
Yeah, I think it's definitely his fights do become more tame.
Yeah.
But it's weird because he is more eccentric out the ring then, and more kind of cocky in a way. He does go on to defend his title multiple times after that, and he's particularly cocky in this era because I think he's sort of reaching his late 20s. He's a bit like, I've achieved it. I've defended my title for I think 5 years, so he's sort of swaggering around. And there is the odd funny moment. So he's at a Barbra Streisand concert.
Of course.
Why wouldn't he be? And he walks out to his seat to a standing ovation.
Wow.
To his box. So at this point, I guess the public's warmed to him a bit, and the spotlight goes on his box, and they all see him. Apparently, he struts to his seat, soaks up the standing ovation, and then he turns to the usher and says, "You can tell Miss Streisand she can come out now," which is great.
It's so camp.
Yeah, so camp.
It's like he kind of serves cunt before serving cunt was a thing. You know?
Yeah, I like the campness.
I think it's nice.
I think more of that from boxers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, he also grows closer to an even bigger name than Barbra Streisand, Mike Tyson. So they've got quite a lot in common. They're both boxers with a lisp who
Oh, yeah.
they came up at the same time. So he said Mike Tyson was in the audience at his first amateur fight, and they become pretty good friends. And when Mike is banged up for 5 years, Chris Eubank visits him 12 different times.
Wow.
Yeah. It's quite. I mean, it's not
That's-
really the
that's-
era you want to align yourself
Yeah.
with Mike Tyson.
So that's only once every 6 months or so, is it?
Yeah, it's a lot of time to go and
Yeah.
visit
Yeah.
someone who's done a bad thing. But yeah, I think they're kind of mates. It's weird. I've never seen them together.
I was just thinking, it's not like a celebrity friendship that I know of.
But I mean, they have maybe because of the lisp, but like their childhoods are quite similar.
Yeah.
Same era, different weight class.
Mike Tyson's lisp is genuine, is it not?
I think Chris Eubanks is genuine, isn't it? We don't really know.
I don't believe
Don't
it's
know what
genuine.
is genuine.
Yeah.
Anyway, fame does come with some unwanted trappings too. He acquires a stalker in this era called Russell, who
Right.
is once the police come to Chris's house and they find Russell in his attic wearing a pair of Chris's boxing shorts, holding a hammer. So it's pretty scary.
That's terrifying.
Wow.
But anyway, he does make some friends among the downtrodden as well. So Chris, he's driving through Park Lane at 5:30 a.m. in his Aston Martin one day, where he spots a homeless guy and he gets out and talks to him and realizes that the guy has what he calls a very sophisticated voice. And this guy's called Max, and he befriends him. He takes Max, invites him for tea and a bath at the Dorchester Hotel.
Okay.
I strongly get the impression he gets in the bath with Max. But
Yeah, it's another odd kind of story.
I quite imagine him like washing Max, you know what I mean? A bit of a Jesus.
Tenderly,
yeah.
Seems like he finds him interesting because he has this sophisticated voice as well. He's sort of kindred spirits.
Yeah. The guy had been in the Navy
Mm.
and fallen on hard times, and Chris is like, I'm gonna help this guy out. So he buys him suits, he puts him up in a flat, and for a while it kind of helps Max, but then one day Chris goes round and he's just gone. And he can't get hold of him, and he never doesn't see him again for a whole year. When one day he's walking down Oxford Street, and there is Max back on the street in his,
That's really sad.
you know, no longer in a suit.
Yeah, but that's not going to help someone get off the streets.
Yeah,
It's like
obviously.
you can't just like put someone in a flat and give them a suit and be like, nothing bad ever happened. No.
Here's your monocle.
It's like, yeah.
I booked you a
See
meeting
you
with the bank
later.
manager. Off you go.
It's quite childish almost in a way.
Yeah.
That you
Yeah.
can like you think that that's going to fix things.
I mean, providing accommodation is obviously a generous gift.
No, I'm not. Yeah,
But it is very common that like people who are homeless find themselves returning to that because
Yeah.
it's a
What he
one-day
really
night.
needed was tiny beds.
yeah. It's generous but confused.
I don't think
I'd say.
Chris Eubank is the guy to parachute into that situation.
No.
He actually says 5 years later he gets this phone call from what he calls a mental hospital, and they're like really apologetic. They're like, Mr. Eubank, I'm so sorry to bother you. This is obviously ridiculous, but we've got this patient who insists that he knows you really well and that you'll come and see him for a cup of tea. And I know this is a waste of time, but we just think we just need to put this thing to bed. And Chris is like, well, what's his name? And they're like, he's called Max. And Chris is like, I know Max. I'll come down and see him. And so apparently the staff just can't believe it. Suddenly Chris
That's
Eubank
amazing.
appears and is just drinking tea with him. And he said the nurses thought they'd gone crazy themselves.
Love that.
It's quite sweet. He's very well meaning about
He
this.
just has so many anecdotes that the more this goes on, the more I'm like, how has no one made a TV show or like a movie
yeah.
about Chris Eubank's
Or a
life?
podcast.
You know what? Yeah. I just.
Yeah.
He
But, you
did.
know,
He has
better.
a,
I feel like
he
it
has
needs to be
a-
like fictionalized.
He does a reality show for a bit at
Yeah,
home
he's
with
on-
the Eubanks. I think
Yeah, it's like a Hogan Knows Best.
Yeah.
And Big Brother. He was on Big Brother.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get
Yeah,
into
yeah.
that stage
Yeah.
quite soon, actually. Anyway, while he's enjoying these deep baths with homeless men, Chris's ambitions in the ring are starting to fade. He's sort of reaching the end of his powers, and in March 1995, age 29, he loses his title to Irishman Steve Collins.
Yep.
As a nod of respect. Actually, while I was looking at that, there was he fought a fight in Belfast around this time, and a soldier was killed that day, and so he wore a bulletproof vest coming out for the
In
fight.
the ring?
No, coming out for it, I think.
Right.
It's like,
It's
what?
ridiculous. I bet that went over really well.
I think it was under his clothes and no one knew, but he just considered himself a target.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Now you hate him, don't you?
Yeah.
That's it.
no,
Roche is lost.
I'm
He's lost
done.
Roche.
He was like landlord and yeah, no,
Unionist.
he's lost the room.
Anyway, so he loses his title to Steve Collins and he loses the rematch as well.
Wow.
So
Is that
Yeah.
quite young for someone to
20, yeah, boxers tend to go on a bit longer,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yeah.
But he had a long peak, 25.
Yeah, that's true.
And maybe in his weight class it's different.
And he started smoking at 6.
Yeah.
So it's had a good
All
run.
for his age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After losing that rematch, he decides to announce his retirement, though. It's October 1995. He does actually make a comeback the following year and does a few fights, including an epic against Joe Calzaghe, but then retires for good in 1998. During that comeback, he decided to buy the title Lord of the Manor of Brighton
Yeah, now we're talking.
for 45 grand, which he then uses in some of the like marketing for some of his comeback fights.
It's
but
like Joe Calzaghe versus
the
Lord of the
Lord
Manor.
of the Manor of Brighton.
I like it.
Yeah. And this title also gives him the ancient right to appoint a town crier,
Love that.
That's great.
which obviously he does use.
So it's real. It's not just one of those things that you buy.
Yeah, it's not
No,
like
it is like a
Ah.
it's not like
genuine
buying a bit
title.
of the moon
He-
or like
he-
Yeah, or
calls it-
buying like a bit of land and
Yeah.
being like,
And now-
Lord of Upshot or whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
tempting.
I think so. He
Can I appoint my own town crier? That's a deal breaker for me. Does he appoint himself as the town crier?
no, he appoints somebody else.
Probably Max.
Yeah,
That's very generous
yeah.
again.
it's
Be his own town crier.
yeah. Although
45 grand to appoint a town crier.
But where's he getting the money from that? Oh, right, he paid.
Yeah,
for
he's
it.
quite
Yeah,
rich
he-
at this point, isn't he? Because Sky gave him 8 million, I think, right at the end of his career.
For what?
yeah, so he signed this
For
crazy
fights.
Oh, right.
deal.
To appoint a town crier, what do you think?
Like, just like a farewell present.
No,
It was crazy. They paid him 10 million to do 8 fights in a year that were going to be on Sky.
Right.
Which apparently, like the doctors were just like, you can't do 8 fights in
Yeah.
a year.
I think
like,
that's why
mental.
he peaks so young, because he actually fights a lot more than most people. in
Yeah,
his peak.
yeah. I'm not exactly sure whether the town crier would have been too impressed by what he did on Brighton Beach on New Year's Eve one year, though. So Chris is there with his family. It's New Year's Eve evening. They're looking out to sea, and he spots this young kid who's looking a bit down in the dumps. And Chris goes over and is like, "Come on, cheer up, my boy. It's New Year's Eve." And the kid, it doesn't really work. The kid's still looking quite depressed. So Chris decides, I'm going to cheer him up. So he tells the kid to wait there, and in half an hour, look out that window and you're going to see something special. And Chris drives home and he fills his Range Rover up with £4,000 worth of fireworks. So he needs to like put down the back seats, piles it high with these like industrial strength
He just
professional
had them at
fireworks.
home.
So apparently he always kept fireworks at home just
Right.
in case he felt like celebrating something. It's
Just
just
Lord of the Manor of Brighton.
yeah,
that.
you know. So he loads it up and drives back to the beach, reverses onto the pebbles with his Range Rover, and starts setting up these fireworks. Among them, he's got 5 huge bin bags which are filled with bangers.
Right.
These like
Inside
large
plastic.
bangers. They're called 50,000 bangs, and he sets up these fireworks. Initially, he's just doing a few Roman candles. You know, the ones that spray up. They're quite
Favourite.
nice to warm you up, and it's all fun and games. But quite quickly, Chris realizes that he hasn't put the rest of the fireworks far enough away, and 30 seconds into one of these explosions, a gentle breeze begins to drift the sparks over towards the bin bags.
Oh no.
So he describes it, he says, "What happened next was like World War III. The first bag had ignited every other bag, so now we had thousands of pounds worth of industrial fireworks going off at random without any control whatsoever. By now, I was running away from the heat of the inferno."
Oh my god.
So basically, it just causes this gigantic explosion. Like all of these, like thousands of pounds worth of fireworks in these bags are just
In one go.
exploding. They're flying everywhere. Cars that are parked on the road, which are like on the beach, it's like quite a long way away. It's like smashes windows of cars. People are just fleeing in every direction, and eventually,
An explosion in Brighton in the late 90s is like. It's a dangerous time to be in this sort of shit.
The whole cabinet. Oh.
Tony
And
Benn
who
was-
will get the blame? Be us. It's a weird choice.
yeah, they're already having flashbacks.
I've always sort of said with fireworks, the thing that's annoying about them is waiting for each round, and it'd be great to see them
Yeah.
all go up at once. And that's
Well,
what this
that's
must
exactly
have
what happens, and it blows a crater in Brighton Beach.
Oh my god.
And eventually, when they've all stopped going off, Chris stumbles back. The air's filled with this acrid smoke, and he's stumbling through the smoke, trying to see if there are any people injured. And he finds these 2 women crying for help, and basically they've got like serious burns. Like he's genuinely like hurt some people, which he feels terrible about, and calls an ambulance for them. And he insists on going in the ambulance with them to the hospital. And
I don't know if you'd want that.
yeah, I know. He said,
You'd be like,
he
just
said,
fuck off.
in
Also, it's
his-
Chris Eubank.
Yeah, of all the people.
Want a sweetie?
yeah,
Like
he
held
said-
hostage
Yeah, she
by
said
the
in his
person that's
book.
burned you.
He said in his book that like he insisted on going with them, and he was like the whole way he was just being like, "I'm really sorry about that." And he was like, "They didn't." He was like, "They didn't seem very keen to talk to me." He's like, "I'm not fucking surprised."
It's like such an awkward because if that happened to me and someone went, I'm really sorry, I'd be like, oh my god, no, it's so
Yeah,
fine.
don't
like,
worry about it.
don't
Yeah.
worry, like it's whatever. It's like
No.
I'm lovely toasty.
Yeah.
they had like very serious burns. So
Oh.
they
I was
said,
actually
like,
really cold,
third
so-
degree
Yeah,
burns.
it's fine.
Yeah, and he ends up getting a big fine and having to do community service,
Oh,
and I think
God.
also pays off these two women out of court as well.
Good.
Yeah,
Which,
I mean,
yeah,
He does occasionally his sort of roller coaster life does
yeah,
hurt
but,
the odd
Yeah.
innocent bystander.
but not in the way that these stories usually
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
It's just by accident.
but he did make a special New Year's Eve for one little kid.
That's true.
So-
This is all worth it.
So that kid, the child,
Kid loved it. Kid
he was
loved
cheered
it.
up. Mission accomplished.
I
Yeah,
really
he's over
thought you were
the
going to
moon.
say that like the smoke cleared and the
And
kid
the-
was like, ah!
He was, but 7 others were badly burned.
Yeah, I mean it all went a little bit wrong,
Yeah,
sadly, but you know
it's very sad.
the good intentions were there,
Mm.
which is the most important thing. Not
Tried
for the
his
women.
best.
I think.
By this point, his boxing career is over, and he's kind of moving more into the media world. So in 2001, he goes on Celeb Big Brother. It's a comic relief special. He's in there with Jack D, Anthea Turner, Vanessa Feltz, Keith Duffy. But he ends up being the first one evicted.
Oh my god, really?
Which, yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected
That's
that.
Yeah.
a huge show.
Yeah, you'd think
What might have been.
what might have been. He was
Jack D
actually,
won it, I remember that.
did he? Yeah.
I vaguely
He-
remember it.
He was so entertaining on it that Chris Evans offered him 50 grand to break back in.
It's really good.
Yeah, but he gets evicted, which means that back in the outside world, he can start to focus on the bigger issues at hand. So he's a massive opponent of the Iraq War, and in 2003, he's arrested after driving his gigantic truck in circles around Parliament Square with an anti-war banner.
I remember this because I used to go to all those anti-war marches
Mm.
and have like the pin on my school bag that said like Blyer instead
Oh,
of
yeah, I
Blur.
love Flyer.
And I remember seeing this and being like, yes, and it was the first time that I realised he wasn't a jockey. Like, it was weird that he's
a
into
truck
this.
driver.
I was like still kind of confused about what he
He's
does.
a politician.
He's an activist, yeah. He does that, and then a few years later, he sort of changes tack and goes back and drives his truck through central London with a banner that's lambasting Tony Blair for sending Prince Harry to Iraq. So
He's chosen a very specific.
Yeah, humanise the tragedy.
yeah, exactly.
true, Prince
The
Harry.
banner on his truck reads, "Blair, don't send our young prince to your catastrophic illegal war to make it look plausible."
And all those other people. Fuck them.
Yeah, those are other people there.
Yeah.
Never mind then.
In 2005, things start to go a little bit pear-shaped for Chris, though. So he gets divorced from
Sad.
Karen, sadly,
Oh.
and files for bankruptcy. So basically, all of this extravagant spending that he'd been doing for years, his monocles and antique canes and gigantic trucks, all starts to catch up with him. And the divorce as well cost him quite a lot. And yeah, he goes bankrupt. He owed 1.3 million in tax. So it's not looking good. And it goes from bad to worse when his own public relations advisor sacks him for being too eccentric.
That's amazing. Sorry, you're too weird.
Yeah.
I knew
His
you were
PR
eccentric,
His PR
but-
advisor.
There are limits.
I want to know what was the limit.
Yeah.
Like
I
what
also-
happened.
I don't know how surely he is employing the PR advisor to advise him. I don't know how the PR advisor can sack him. Sack himself, maybe.
That's a
Yeah.
wthink up call if you're being sacked for being too weird.
Yeah. Your PR advisor is like, there's just nothing I can do for
So
this.
they knew he was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he'd be quite a fun person to be a PR advisor for.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
not doing anything bad. It's not like, waking up and find out that he said something super problematic on Twitter. He's just
Just badly burning a few people on
Yeah.
Brighton Beach.
been people in comas.
Fortunately, though, he does have options to make his money back. So at this point, he's hired as a tailor by Cad and Dandy, a Savile Row suit shop.
Is he trained as a tailor?
Presumably. Wouldn't put it past him.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's more of an endorsement, but apparently he is sort of designing suits with them.
Ceremonial role.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
works. And of course, there's always reality TV if you need a quick buck. So he goes on I'm a Celeb and Gogglebox. Now we're into the era of Chris Eubank that he's sort of famed for more widely today, I think, which is this
Just for being weird.
weird man on telly who
Yeah.
once boxed. Gogglebox, actually, I think he does his rep quite a lot good there. Mainly that one clip,
Yeah.
which always does the rounds. We've got it here, where he's sitting with his son.
Would you like a sweetie?
A what?
A sweetie.
I'll take a Smartie.
These are Smarties, indeed. A absolutely stupendous confectionery.
His son's so normal as well.
Yeah.
His son's just like, what?
It makes me wonder whether he's like that behind.
Well, because he's a bit
closed
putting it
doors.
on, maybe.
Yeah.
The way he's moving like a robot. His
Yeah.
arms are like...
It's kind of like AI or something. Like he's only
Yeah.
just arrived on Earth.
Hearing that
Yeah,
clip's made me
yeah.
realise how bad our accents have been.
Yeah.
Want a sweetie?
The accents throughout have been Hannibal Lecter. It's not Chris Eubank.
Oh well. We're here now. Yeah, you do wonder if that's like for Gogglebox, but the posture's so like
He's
rigid.
he's very. But so is that? that was how I found out that his son was
Chris
also
Eubank Jr., yeah.
also a boxer.
Yeah. Just pointing out that sweets are quite a big part of Chris's life. He dedicates a whole chapter to them in his autobiography.
Love that.
Railing against the rebranding of Marathon Bar at Snickers. But in the end, he actually has to quit sugar because he's so addicted, he says. It's like his vice. And while explaining this on his YouTube channel, Cool Chris Eubank, he tells a stupendous tale.
Some years ago, I was driving my truck, and I remember having it parked outside a hotel in London called The Landmark. So overnight, the truck was broken into, smashed the window, and they took the television, which was in the back, and whatever else they took. To where I was like, well, this is what happens. I know what that life is like. And so therefore I held nothing against the assailants. However, from the back I went to the front, and I went into the glove compartment, and my strawberry bonbons had been taken. I called the police. I was furious. Steal what you want, but never touch another man's bonbons. It is illegal. It is against the law and principles of treats and sweets. True story. I called the police on the strength of that. I didn't mind the video and the television being taken. Didn't mind the smashed window, but never touch another man's bonbons.
Agree.
It seems like he's lost his lisp as well, isn't he?
Yeah, it's gone in the later one.
Yeah, so Jack, our producer, according to Jack, Chris Eubank got rid of his famous lisp. Because I was starting to think we'd imagined it.
Yeah. Well, we were just considering having to re-record the whole,
Yeah, all the
whole
impressions.
episode. Of the
But apparently he
impressions.
spent 31 grand to have his teeth fixed and got rid of his lisp.
You thought it was like a Mandela effect thing that he never had.
Yeah,
lisp
like,
in-
did he
in
ever
the
have a
beginning.
lisp? We're the only ones who even thought he had, but he did. Anyway, yeah.
It's an amazing clip because I love that he's throughout. I'm like, oh, it's so cool that he's not like a carceral person. He doesn't want to send people to prison until they take the bonbons.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
fuck 'em.
Cut their fucking hands off.
As someone whose favourite food is sweets, I totally understand that.
Your strawberry bonbon.
Love a strawberry. I had to give up strawberry bonbons as well. 'cause
Oh, yeah?
I have like 5 root canals. I had to stop.
Got rid of my famous lisp, though.
Yeah,
You know, the
it's
lisp he had for years. Anyway, he's now given up sugar entirely.
Love that.
It was too much of a vice. And that's not the only thing he changes. So when his son, Chris Eubank Jr., becomes a very famous boxer, Chris decides that it's confusing that they both have the same name. And he changes his name and from now on says, just call me English.
One,
Yeah,
like
one word.
Madonna.
Just the word English.
Right.
So apparently it was his dad's nickname. So it's not
English.
completely weird.
Right.
But I mean, obviously the logical thought process of this is if you don't want people to confuse you with your son,
Don't call him
don't
Chris
call
Eubank.
him Chris Eubank.
Yeah.
Anyway, Chris Eubank Jr. is a decent fighter. He's not just a chip off the old block. And Chris, I didn't realise Chris is quite involved in his career. So I've got a clip here of Chris at one of his fights addressing him in the corner.
Let's see if we can listen in. That might be difficult for Chris Eubank to say what needs saying in a minute. Here we go. For once, a man of few words. Never expect the expected. Ronnie Davis hasn't said a word either, and Chris is just standing there looking at his son. I'll get your head around that, Barry.
What I like about this clip is you're just seeing Chris Eubank Jr., normal-looking boxer, sits down in his corner, and from nowhere up pops Chris Eubank in his sleeveless butler in the buff outfit. It's the way he just appears. Funny. And he starts addressing him, and the commentators are finding it so funny.
He's great shape.
It must be so funny fighting him, and up comes the butler in the buff.
It's like when someone at your school had their teacher was their dad.
Yeah, he does. His son does look always a little bit embarrassed when his dad comes out.
Yeah, because his dad's dressed as a gay butler. It's like a butler in a Madonna music video. Do you know what I mean? Like a sexualized.
He looks like he's about to have the trousers that you could just whip off in one move.
Velcro sides.
He's got quite an adversarial stance as well. It seems pissed off at his son in this.
Yeah, well, he is actually having a massive go at him. So it turns out that Chris has noticed that Chris Eubank Jr.'s opponent is in a really bad way. And he wants the fight stopped, and he approaches the referee. The ref won't listen. So in that clip, when he's telling him off, it's because he's telling his son, "You can't hit him in the head. You're going to kill him."
Right.
And his son's just like, "Fuck off! You're being really weird." But he threatens to jump in. Anyway, the fight does
Please
end.
put a jacket on.
Weirdly, he's doing all of this in a stripper-gram outfit, which does make it harder to take him seriously. But he, quite soon after that, the fight does end, and the guy is taken to hospital. Wow. And basically, they say later that Chris Eubank saved his life.
Oh my God!
He had a clot on the brain, and he would have died if he'd been hit in the head a few more times.
Suggesting that Chris Eubank has some sort of sixth sense.
Yeah,
he's magical.
Yeah, which I sort of buy.
He looks great in that clip. If you discount the outfit.
Yeah, he's in good nick.
Yeah.
The rig's looking good. The dress sense is weird.
Yeah, I don't think it's butler. I think it's quite clerical.
Sexy accountant.
No, clerical is in a
religious cleric.
Yeah,
a
reverend.
I see that. Yeah. But it's got
sexy vicar.
Yeah, it's got that thing like you said, stripper outfits. That's a police outfit, but you can kind of tell.
Yeah,
it's got that quality of.
Yeah, the Met don't wear that.
If he turned round and there'd been holes cut out of the arse, no one would have been surprised.
Like Mike Tyson had. Mike Tyson had those.
That recent pitch. Anyway, so you say, funny you mentioned the Sixth Sense thing, because Barry Hearn always says that fight where he lost his title, that basically before it, his opponent had said that he'd been hypnotised. And apparently going into the fight, Chris was like, "I can't fight him, he's been hypnotised." And Barry Hearn was like, "I don't think you need to worry about this." But he was really affected by it.
He's quite mystical.
He has quite a lot of respect for the mystic,
which
you obviously like about him.
Yeah, as a fellow
witch
girl.
As a witch. And on the safety thing, do you remember also, he tried to stop Chris Jr. and Conor Benn's fight because of this massive gap in their weights. So he's a bit of a safety guy this week. Although his concerns about safety don't necessarily apply when he's at the wheel of his motor. And no one knows better than that than cycling vigilante, Cycling Mikey, who he did him. You know him, right?
No.
Know of him?
Yeah, no. Yeah. We all know of
Cycling Mikey, who I have to say I absolutely love him as a character. I don't love what he necessarily does, but he's box office. So if you don't know, he's a vigilante cycling guy who goes around filming people using their phones at the wheel and then dobbing them in. Probably the most hated man in Britain at this point. Fascinating character. And in 2021, Cycling Mikey was doing his rounds near Hyde Park when who does he spot? Chris Eubank. Here's the clip.
I hope you're not using the phone. I know, but if I film you using it and you get 6 points.
Yeah.
Did you read about Guy Ritchie?
I didn't actually. I read about David Beckham.
That was some other random person, but I was the one who got Guy Ritchie. I didn't even know who he was.
Right.
Are you famous? I wouldn't know who you are either.
I'm just a guy. You happy now?
Yeah, but you shouldn't be holding it, should you?
Hi. Go away.
You shouldn't be holding it, should you?
I'm an officer. Hi.
You're a police officer?
Yeah, off you go.
Should you be holding it?
Off you go.
No? I'll stay here.
So Chris drives off in his Rolls Royce, and then he basically straight away jumps a red light.
Through a red light? Because he's distracted on the phone?
Yeah, he's distracted by you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why. He's almost caused a crash.
Yeah. So Cycling
sucks.
Mikey, there's quite a good bit later on, you see Chris Eubank going the other way and he beeps his horn and waves to Cycling Mikey. Cycling Mikey dobs him in and he gets 3 points and a fine.
This guy's a dick.
Yeah, obviously he's a
Yeah.
complete cunt, but what a character.
Also, just like so over the top to be like, by the way, I don't know who you are. It's like,
yeah,
leave
I got
him
Guy Ritchie the
alone.
other day. He's like,
Yeah.
And also,
he's
Chris
a bounty hunter.
Is he? I mean, I don't drive. Is he actually doing anything bad there? Because he's sitting in traffic and he's got the hands
I think you're not
free.
supposed to hold your phone.
Yeah.
Even when
by
the car's
probably
stationary.
by
But he
the
doesn't
letter
get done
of
for
the
that. He
law.
gets done for jumping the red light because he's distracted by cycling Mikey.
Frick.
Yeah, it's Oh, actually, interestingly, the day before, Chris and David Hay, the boxer, had helped a woman who'd been hit by a car. So this woman was hit by a car, and the first two people on the scene were
What,
David Hay and Chris
independently?
Eubank. Yeah,
They
they
weren't
weren't
together?
together.
That's
They weren't
amazing.
together. Anyway, that's where Chris Eubank's at the moment. He's doing the odd bit of reality TV. He did Scared of the Dark with Gaza. We talked about that in the Gaza
Oh,
episode
yeah.
where Gaza describes wanking at number 10. And Chris is horrified because he is like a man of sort of like, he believes in like manners and
Yeah. He's a gentleman.
I guess the big question is overall good egg or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think good egg.
Th-
I think-
Despite the fact that he's committed some crimes on this, like the burns
yeah.
and the coma,
Mm.
like weirdly the most obvious good egg episode I've been on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
Like,
he did
yeah.
a lot of like actual crimes in his youth, but I don't know. I feel like he was always quite. He's kind of got like a moral compass around it. Like he was stealing because he had nothing and he needed the money. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
he didn't need a Burberry coat.
Yeah, but shoplifting's a victimless crime.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
against
yeah.
what, like LVMH.
Yeah, who gives a fuck?
They're rich.
Yeah, and then when it comes to like,
It is.
I don't know,
I do
like
agree.
stepping in crimes where people are getting hurt.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we need more people like him.
I don't know about that. How many Chris
I
Eubanks
think-
can the world
I think
soak
I think
up?
the world would be a more entertaining place if there were
Yeah.
more people like Chris Eubank.
More weirdos.
Yeah.
Not too many, but
I was with you till you said we need. I mean, I love him. He's probably one of the people I'd most like to meet that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the world can only handle so many of him. Like he does in his chaotic wake, he does cause quite a lot of damage. Right?
I don't think he would enjoy being on the upshot.
He'd be confused by
I
it.
think he would find it like too saucy.
Yeah.
Saucy.
Does he have a list? I still don't know. I think overall good egg. Yeah.
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 Mad. Completely mental.
Yeah. Mad as a box of frogs.
Yeah. That definitely
Yeah.
definitely applies to
to
him. Is he a national treasure
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I'd
so.
say he's
despite his occasional
Well,
harm?
the only annoying thing about it is that now his son's going to have to be so boring because he can't be eccentric in any way. He just has to.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit of the absolutely fabulous problem. He's sappy.
He's sappy,
Yeah, that's true. How do you rebel against Chris Eubank?
Yeah.
I think you just point out that he doesn't talk like that on Gogglebox
Yeah.
at home in a very subtle way that people pick up.
Do you think he talks like that at home? Do you think he acts like that?
No,
at
because
home?
the clip that we saw at the very start where he was talking to his brother, he doesn't speak
What,
like
he's
that.
like, Peter, I done it.
Yeah.
Do you think he's like that at home?
I think he must
No,
be.
I think he is like this. Maybe not quite so exaggerated, but I think he is to an extent like that at home.
All right, so not a wrong un.
No.
National treasure.
Good.
Occasionally, that was the odd cock up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know someone
Good
who
egg.
went out with him? I think you've met her. She like used to come and
big,
advise
like-
us.
oh,
and stuff.
yeah.
She went out with him, so I'm gonna try and meet up with her and hear what that was like.
Interesting. Can't imagine him having sex. Yeah.
Yeah, me neither.
It's just
Impossible.
like-
yeah, really
You do
hard
the
to
voice,
imagine.
Yeah.
Which is not the case usually on the upshot.
Yeah.
It's usually very visceral.
It's an interesting thought experiment of what Chris Eubank's like in the sheets. All right.
Anyway.
That's all we got time for.
Great.
Rose, thanks a lot. I enjoyed that one a lot.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me in for someone who's not a wrong'un. I think.
Yeah, we think. Some may disagree. Zach, thanks a lot.
Thank you. That was
And
fun.
thanks a lot for listening. If you enjoyed that, please share it with your friends, as always. And we'd love to hear your verdict on it. See you soon.